On November 24, 2009, 137 trained professionals gathered deep underground. They were close enough to talk to a trapped man. They were close enough to hold his feet. Yet, despite their numbers and expertise, that man would never leave the cave. 26-year-old John Edward Jones was visiting family in Utah for Thanksgiving. As a medical student, John possessed a thorough clinical understanding of human anatomy. He knew exactly what the human body could survive, and tragically, he would soon understand exactly how his own biological systems were failing. That evening, John and his friends entered Nutty Putty Cave. This is a hydrothermal cave, carved out over millennia by hot water dissolving underground limestone. The result is a labyrinth of extremely narrow, twisting pathways, a geological maze so hazardous that officials were previously forced to temporarily close the site. By 2009, the cave was back open with strict permitting rules. John's group had clearance, a designated time slot, and experienced companions. This structure provided a predictability that made the environment seem manageable, masking the fact that the rock around them offered absolutely zero margin for error. This diagram shows the twisting tunnels of Nutty Putty. John split from the main group to find a challenging passage known as the Birth Canal, which requires a right turn. Instead, he took a left. He crawled straight into a largely unmapped, severely tight section known as Ed's Push. Believing he was still on the correct path, John continued crawling head first. He kept pushing forward, assuming the tunnel would eventually open up into a wider room where he could turn around. But the walls only drew closer together, and the floor sloped steeply downward. Here is what that trap looks like in cross-section. John was 6 feet tall and weighed 200 pounds. Gravity pulled his frame deep into a tiny crevice measuring exactly 18 by 10 inches, roughly the size of a front-loading washing machine opening. He became firmly wedged upside down at a 70-degree angle, with his feet pinned near the ceiling of the tight passage. Every natural force was now working against him. With his arms pinned beneath him and his feet wedged into the narrowest part of the crevice, John had no point of leverage. The same gravity that had pulled him into the wedge now provided the constant force necessary to keep him there. Reaching John was a logistical nightmare. The first rescuer, Susie, crawled 400 feet deep into the cavern on her stomach just to make contact. When she finally reached him, she tied a rope to his ankles and pulled. Despite her effort, he barely moved. This diagram illustrates why manual pulling failed. The walls of Nutty Putty are not smooth. When force was applied to John's legs, his body shifted upward, but his mass immediately created drag against the jagged limestone. The rock walls absorbed the energy of the pull, neutralizing the force before it could slide him out. While the rock held him, his own anatomy began to turn against him. Humans are largely fluid, and our circulatory system relies on gravity. Hanging upside down at 70 degrees forces the heart to work overtime to push blood uphill into the lower extremities. The heart simply isn't designed to maintain that kind of pressure. At the same time, his internal organs, resting on the diaphragm, were continuously pressing down onto his lungs. Every breath required him to physically lift his organs against gravity. As his muscles fatigued, his oxygen intake steadily dropped. The entire rescue operation fractured into a race against two different sciences. The crews needed time to systematically defeat the mechanical friction of the cave, but the longer they took, the closer John crept to biological failure. The crews shifted their strategy to mechanical advantage. A rescuer named Ryan spent hours slowly navigating the tight tunnel to install a complex rope and pulley system, intending to multiply their lifting force far beyond what human muscle could achieve. This skeletal diagram highlights an agonizing anatomical problem they faced. To pull John out, they had to navigate his 6-foot frame around a sharp bend in the ceiling. Because the knee is a rigid hinge joint, they realized they would likely have to break his legs to get him past. The pulley system began to work. The ropes tightened, generating massive force, and slowly lifted John enough to ease the crushing friction. He rested for a moment, drank from an energy gel tube, and spoke to his wife over a radio, promising he would make it out. Then the cave itself failed. The stone arch anchoring the main pulley shattered under the immense pressure, and a heavy metal carabiner whipped backward, striking Ryan violently in the face. With the mechanical tension gone, John instantly dropped back down into the deepest, tightest point of the crevice. The failure revealed a critical mechanical limit. The force required to overcome the friction of the tunnel was greater than the structural strength of the rock anchors. To lift John's weight at that angle, the pulley system had to exert more pressure than the cave walls could withstand. The crews spent hours trying to rebuild the system, but the space was too confined, and the rescuers were severely exhausted. Approaching the 27-hour mark, a paramedic managed to reach John's exposed feet. He checked the temperature of the skin. There was no sensation. John's heart and lungs finally gave out from the constant downward pressure. At 11:55 p.m. on November 25th, he was pronounced dead from cardiac arrest and blood pooling in the brain. He passed away surrounded by rescue workers who could physically hold onto his feet, but couldn't move him an inch. The same spatial constraints that defeated the rescue mission also made a recovery operation impossible. Since no human could be moved through that 18 by 10-inch passage without the mechanical aid that had already failed, officials chose to seal the entrance with concrete. Despite the arrival of 137 rescuers, specialized equipment, and medical teams, the outcome was dictated by a few inches of limestone. The Nutty Putty incident remains a reminder that human intent and engineering can still be defeated by basic, unforgiving physical dimensions.